but there's nowhere to go. And then I heard that another plane hit, and if you go over by there, you can see the people jumping out the window. They're jumping out the window right now.
Obviously, in twin towers that are 110
are not joined together. The only thing that joins them together is their hatred for us, our way of life, our foreign policy.
But Jim Kelstrom, you say that these various terrorist organizations are not necessarily as well connected as...
And which the city was girding for. In fact, went through an emergency drill last week, a war, and it may be a call for the Congress to do just exactly that, to make a declaration of war.
Ollie North, thank you. Stay with us if you would, please. Let's get some thoughts on that from another man who knows more than a thing or two about declarations of war here, Mr. Secretary.
Well, the terrorists have declared war on us for a number of years now. We simply haven't treated it as a war. I'm sure this very shocking and horrible day will certainly energize that kind of thinking, and I would be for it, certainly. We should declare war on terrorism, and we should take all the actions necessary to stamp it out. And that means working with our allies in close harmony, but also not to be hogtied by moral equivalence arguments which have seemed to dominate our response up till now. Behind our elected president and get on with the task of giving all the resources we can, our prayers, our physical resources, to the victims of
advised others to take, business and everyday life can continue as normal. As for those that carried out these attacks, there are no adequate words of condemnation. Their barbarism will stand as their shame for all eternity. As I said earlier, this mass terrorism is the new evil in our world. The people who perpetrate it have no regard whatever for the sanctity or value of human life. And we, the democracies of the world, must come together to defeat it and eradicate it. This is not a battle between the United States of America and terrorism, but between the free and democratic world and terrorism. We therefore here in Britain stand shoulder to shoulder with our American friends in this hour of tragedy, and we, like them, will not rest until this evil is driven from our world.
Live from Great Britain, Tony Blair, the British Prime Minister, with his response and comments on what had happened today. In one of the
morning, the first tower had already been hit by a similar hijacked plane, flying bombs, if you will. This then is video taken from about 10 a.m. After that tower, the second one which was hit, that tower could no longer stand the strain of the flames that weakened the structural elements, and the tower collapsed, sending concrete, glass, steel raining down almost a quarter mile onto the streets below. This now, the second tower, the one that was hit by the first plane, also collapsing, earthbound, in a deafening and terrible and fiery conflagration of smoke, flames, and certainly tremendous loss of life. Perhaps as many as 50.
Horrified spectators cried aloud as they saw one after another persons jumping or forced out of the building. There were secondary, then third explosions, and then a fourth explosion. Apparently, no one knows for sure, from the high-octane fuel and other causes in the interior of the building brought about by the crash of the two planes into the World Trade Centers. 4 aircraft, commercial aircraft, were hijacked during the day. 2 of them crashed into the World Trade Center buildings. Another apparently crashed into the Pentagon, where there has been some loss of life. How much we do not know, and there have been some injuries. And then another plane is believed, this has never been completely, totally confirmed, in the area of Camp David, the presidential retreat in Camp David, Maryland. FBI officials reported earlier that a plane had crashed in that vicinity, but it's been a confused reporting situation about that since then. And then in western Pennsylvania, in the Pittsburgh area, there was a big plane crash there, details of which are still being sorted out. That was the crash in Somerset, Pennsylvania. So the North World Trade Center tower was hit, then the South Tower hit. Both
shells of what used to be a very familiar sight to many Americans. The steel and glass and concrete towers rising up 110 stories proud. They are simply enormous piles of rubble right now. Again, we do not know how many people have died. There could have been as many as 50,000 people in the building.
Towers went down. Of course, that caused even more damage to lower Manhattan. At the same time, the Pentagon was attacked.
In the known world. Ask anyone who responded at Oklahoma City, Khobar Towers, all of the places that have since gained their fame because of tragedy. It is not bodies, but parts of bodies often that we are talking about here. The specialist dogs are already on the scene. More will come in. By the way, Russia had a team all set on the runway last night asking U.S. approval to send them to the United States to help in this. Here, yet another view. We've learned a lot about the metallurgy and building construction and what can happen when a vessel flying that quickly, jet-propelled, hits a building built that sturdily, and that's what can happen right there. Just been told from our producer, Alice Rhee, NBC News producer in Lower Manhattan, that Building 3, and the layout is by now pretty familiar for people who've been following this story, could be about to collapse. There are markers, there are usual signs that things are about to go. Chief among them, the kind of yawning sound that a building can make and breaking glass. When windows start popping, especially along the front facade, that's when people start getting people out of the way. Quickly, John Palmer, anything over where you are?
Brian, we've just gotten a message from the pool reporter indicating that they're going to be feeding some material of the president meeting with some of these rescue workers here. As we look over to the scene here, we see the American flag, which, as we have seen, that has been unfurled. It's about a 3-story high flag. Just to the right, as we look at it,
They began to believe that that building might collapse. Periodically, we have seen pieces of glass, pieces of facing. Everyone has been moved back. One of the markers for us all day has been a fire truck which has been pouring water on Building 7 of the World Trade Complex, one of the buildings that collapsed. That fire truck, about 10 minutes ago, stopped pouring water and is now, at least so appears to me, backing out of there. Again, this is just eyeballing this. We don't see anyone down there that we would describe as a civilian. Everybody has been pulled out. About 10 minutes or so ago, Mayor Giuliani and Joe Alba, the FEMA director, the Federal Emergency Management Agency director, walked to the scene. They were followed by a large motorcade. They walked to the scene. That is the situation. We keep our eye on the building, and we go back to Judy Woodruff in Washington. Judy.
And you are, of course, recapping what we do know at this point about what's going on in New York. I know CNN at one point had confirmed that at least part of that structure at One Liberty Plaza had actually caved in, and I know we're going to follow it and come back to you as as soon as need be if something more happens there. I will just tell you that here in Washington, a flag was unfurled this evening at the Pentagon near the site of where the commercial jet plowed into that building yesterday. The flag there to welcome President Bush, who went to the Pentagon to look at the damage and to talk to workers to offer his consolation. I think you have to say, looking at that flag, that it clearly is a symbol that the United States, the Pentagon, indeed the United States, will prevail no matter what enemies of this country might do to us. CNN's Jonathan Karl has been at the Capitol all day talking to members of Congress. Jonathan, bring us up to date from there.
Well, two things you should know about, Judy. One is that there's been serious discussion among the members of the Congress here, both House and Senate, about whether or not there would be a need to have a declaration of war against who. It's unclear right now, but a declaration of war against whatever state or non-state entities might have been involved in these attacks. This is an idea that's been pushed very strongly by many Republicans, including Arlen Specter, talked about it on the floor of the Senate today, and also on the Democratic side, Robert Torricelli talked about some kind of declaration of war. Part of the discussion here, but let me tell you, Judy, as you saw, the Congress pass what it did pass today, which